What's my motivation? So, this is power standard number 7. Now, in this power standard, we're really focusing on the central ingredient of any story, and that's characters and characterization, how we find out about the personality and the traits of a character. And then lastly, what's their motivation? This is a key essential tool when reading any literary story. So let's define some things. First, we have motive. Motive is the general desire or willingness to do something. Then we have character. Character is a person, animal, or thing in a story. Thing could be anything like a slug, an ink pen, a monster, a sci-fi creature. You name it, and a thing could be anything as long as it's some type of character involved in the action in the story. Now, Vit number 1, situation plus personality equals motivation. Now, situation is the plot and the conflict that the character is involved in. Personality is the actual character traits and attributes that a character has. So typically, you learn about those through indirect and direct characterization. Situation, personality combined yields you motivation. Now, when you're analyzing characters, there are 3 critical questions that you need to remember. Question 1, how can I describe characters? We do that through, as I stated, indirect and direct characterization. More specifically, direct characterization. Question 2 to consider, how can I analyze the actions of the character? We're going to learn later that these actions are more commonly referred to as the steel of a character. S-T-E-A-L. And that we learn about the actions of a character through indirect characterization. And then lastly, what motivates a character and why do they act a certain way? That's where we take direct, indirect characterization, clues that we found, and then we analyze their motive. Now, as a reader, we have certain responsibilities that we need to adhere to as we are moving along the story. First thing we want to do is we want to pay attention to a character's steel. Now, steel stands for what a character says, what they think, their actions, their effect on others, like their relationships, and what they look like. So S-T-E-A-L. We want to track the character's behavior patterns. How do they change? How do they stay the same? How do they evolve? And then lastly, we want to reflect on the character's reasons or motives for doing something.
Okay, sorry. Where was I?
State Farm agents are there whenever you need them.
While others go in circles and repeat themselves.
Now, since we're talking about characters, let's talk about characters. 1, every story needs them. You can't have a good short story without characters. They move the plot. They enhance the conflict. A story is nothing without characters. Like I said, they influence the plot. They are moving within the plot. People, animals, things, aka creatures. So, if an author has a story about hamburgers and french fries, that's a thing. Those are our characters. We're going to see how they influence the plot, and we're also going to see how they propel the conflict. Now, real quick, let's segue and talk about conflict. Now, conflict is an opposition between 2 opposing forces. Now, in literature, there are 2 types of conflict. Direct and external and internal conflict. 2 types of conflict, external and internal. Now, on the internal side, that means it's inside, the inside forces. The only person you can fight within yourself in a story typically is yourself. That's called man versus man. External has 3 types. It has man versus man. That means 2 people are fighting. We have man versus nature. That means man is fighting nature. And then we have man versus society. That's where man is fighting society or status quo. books, things like that. Now, the last thing we need to know about characters is that they influence the reader. You may be reading a story and be like, man, that sounds like me, or I know somebody like that. Characters influence the reader. Now, there are 4 types of characters. We have round, flat, dynamic, and static. Let's talk about round first. A round character has many traits. You see the good side of them and you see the bad side of them. So you really get a complete picture of who they are. In my opinion, they're the most human-like because you see the flaws, the imperfections, and the strengths and the weaknesses. Now, in the world of Harry Potter, some skeptics would say that Severus Snape is a round character. If you've read the entire series, you realize you see the good and the bad in him, and you also see how he is the most human-like. He's not afraid to show his good side, and he's not afraid to show his bad side. The next character type is a flat character. A flat character is where you see one trait. Usually not good, sometimes good, but typically one trait. And they don't evolve and they don't change. The next character type, now a flat character, I would describe that to be Lord Voldemort, or he who must not be named. He would be a flat character. The next character we have is a dynamic character. The dynamic character is just that. He is dynamic. You see his good, you see his bad, but not only that, he develops and changes as the story goes on. The story and the plot and the conflict change who he is. So at the beginning of the story, he's not who he is. In a sense, that's typically your protagonist, which is why I listed Harry Potter. But some circles say that Severus Snape is the dynamic. Now, typically the flat and the dynamic characters battle. So you typically see the flat character being your antagonist of a story. The last character is static. One-dimensional. That's it. You're not going to get a lot, and they do not develop or change. A round, flat, or dynamic character has the definite potential to change. Dynamic definitely, round some of the time, and flat even less than that.
Dies or any of that kind of stuff. Okay. Sexuality is totally different than what my issues were.
So now that we know about characters, now let's talk about how to learn about the character's personality. We do that through characterization. Tip number 2. Characterization makes the characters come to life for the reader. Now, characterization is defined as the way the author shows the personality of a character. So, an author has 2 ways to do that. Direct characterization and indirect characterization. In direct characterization, the author is telling you specifically about the character's personality. So therefore, it's obvious to the reader, and it spells it right off. In direct characterization, the author doesn't want you to use any inferencing skills. They literally want to get it out the way and spell it out and tell you and make it obvious to you. Linda understood from her last meeting that Bill was shy. So the author wants us to know that Bill is shy. That's his personality. He is of average height and has a solid build owing to the years he spent as a construction worker. His face is not too wrinkled, but his complexion is ruddy. This is the author spelling out exactly what the character looks like. He is usually casually dressed. He dislikes wearing a suit and tie. Bam, he's telling us who he is, who this character is. Freddie was very competitive. Right then again, the author is spelling it out, making it obvious to us. The next type of characterization is indirect characterization. This is where the author is showing you things that reveal the personality of a character to you. So the author does this by using still. Now, indirect characterization still stands for what a character says, what they think, their effect on people around him, aka relationships, their actions, what they do, and what they look like. VIP number 3, indirect characterization requires inferences. You have to make inferences. You have to do a lot of inferring, drawing conclusions, and making generalizations when you see indirect characterization. Also, here's another VIP. Authors typically use indirect characterization in their writing. They don't always want to spell it out and make it obvious for you. They want you to figure it out for yourself. 2 days before the game, Freddie gathered his teammates and laid out his plan. Then he looked at them and said, "We are not going to win this. We are going to win this one. No excuses." So clearly, 2 days before the game, Freddie gathered his teammates and told him his plan. And then he specifically said to the group, we are not going to lose this game. We're going to win it. No excuses. So automatically you can say Freddie has a love for whatever game he's playing, or you can even infer that Freddie is very competitive. Here we go. The little boy stood in the cereal aisle of the grocery store. He raised a hand to his red, tear-streaked face and put his thumb in his mouth. With wide eyes, he looked left, then right, then behind him. Then he closed his eyes and whimpered. So, what is this character going through? Well, first off, he's in the cereal aisle of a grocery store. He raised his hand to his red, tear-streaked face. So something has him frightened, sad, or scared because he's crying. Then he put his thumb in his mouth. Another indicator that he could be sad or crying. With his wide eyes, he looked left, then right, then behind him, then he closed his eyes and whimpered. So when we use the Steele model, our little boy didn't say anything. He didn't give us any thoughts. There's no one around him, but his actions and what he looks like is saying a lot. What are his actions and his look and what he looks like are saying? It looks like what he's saying is that he's scared and he's frightened and that he can't find his mom. Now, we've all read the classic tale by Dr. Seuss, How the Grinch Stole Christmas. But let's take a look at the character, the Grinch. What was his motivation? We knew he hated Christmas, but we never knew why. What were the true motives behind him deciding to take Christmas away from the Whovilles? By using Modestil and our Show Me, Direct Me, and Let Me Steal, in the following clip, let's analyze exactly what makes the Grinch tick.
For some reason, when he came home that day, he really got into the Christmas spirit for the first time.
Baby, picture you
Perfect!
hanging around a Christmas tree.
Whoopsie!
Colored lights and an angel up above. Christmas of love.
What a lovely family heirloom!
Everyone,
Oh!
come have a lot of fun at Christmas time. Now it's alright. Everybody say, have a Merry Christmas of love.
The fires of love.
Baby, make a little wish.
This will be perfect on the top of a tree. Oh, Martha. Oh, Christmas.
Everything you've been dreaming of. Christmas of love.
I want you all to look your best tomorrow.
You don't have a chance with her. You're 8 years old and you have a beard.
Has everyone given their gifts?
I haven't. Merry Christmas, Martha May.
Why do you have a bag on your head?
Probably because he's embarrassed by that idiot or his gift.
Mr. Grinch, please take the bag off. Yes, you take it off. Put the book down. And your foot.
Look at that hack job! Stupid trivet! Stupid prank! I hate Christmas!
The anger, the fury,
the muscles. It was a horrible day when they were so cruel to him. And I could hardly bear it.